Imagine you're tracking the gross ticket sales of the 5 most popular horror movies of all time. We're talking massive blockbusters like The Conjuring or The Ring. You want to build a mathematical model to predict future earnings based on their past performance. But before you write down a single equation, you hit a massive wall. Your shiny new formula is spitting out negative years and negative ticket sales.
So how do we mathematically define the limits of what's actually possible here? Obviously, you can't sell -3 tickets, and a movie definitely couldn't have been released in the year -500, right? To model real-world data like a box office gross, we need to mathematically identify what values are physically and logically permitted. We need boundaries.
By the end of this explainer, you're going to completely understand the concept of mathematical boundaries, the formulas behind them, and exactly how to apply these concepts to real life. We are covering 1. The function machine, 2. Speaking math, which is interval notation, 3. Equation rules and restrictions, 4. Reading graphs and data, and 5. Tackling piecewise functions. Okay, Section 1. The function machine. Let's dive right into this. Before we look at any heavy algebra, we need a foundational, real-life analogy to understand how mathematical functions actually process information.
Think of a function like a giant manufacturing machine in a factory. The domain is your first holding area. It contains literally all the raw materials, the input values that the machine is physically allowed to accept. You feed those raw materials into the function machine, it does its thing, it processes them, and out come the final products. These final products land in a second holding area, which we call the range. So simply put, the domain is what goes in, and the range is the set of all possible outputs that come out.
Now you might be wondering, wait, can a function's domain and range have zero overlap? Like, can they be entirely different things? The answer is absolutely yes. A function's inputs and outputs can be completely different categories. Take an attendance chart, for example. Your inputs, your domain, might just be the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But your outputs, the range, would be the number of students present, 25, 28, 30. There's literally zero overlap between the concept of Monday and the number 25, but they are perfectly valid domains and ranges. Moving on to Section 2, Speaking Math, Interval Notation. Now that we've got the basic idea of these holding areas down, let's talk about the mathematical grammar we use to write them out, because we definitely need a quick way to write out these massive boundaries without listing every single number in the universe. Okay, wait, this is a super important moment, so definitely lock this in. When we write intervals, we use specific types of brackets. For an exclusive boundary, we use parentheses. That means the endpoint is not included. If you're looking at a graph, this is represented by an open dot. But for an inclusive boundary, we use square brackets. That means the endpoint is included, and on a graph that's a solid filled-in dot. Think about it like this. If you have a $100 gift card, you can spend exactly $100, so that upper boundary would get a square bracket. But what if our valid numbers have a gap right in the middle? Well, when that happens, we bring in the union symbol, which basically just looks like a giant uppercase U. It acts like mathematical glue, perfectly combining two totally unconnected sets of numbers into one official domain.
All right, Section 3, Equation Rules and Restrictions. Let's make this easier with an actual example. We're going to drop down to the mathematical formula level and discuss the boundaries of what is actually mathematically permitted. When we just have an equation staring at us, how do we find the domain?
Well, there are 2 golden rules of algebra that restrict our raw materials. Step 1. If your function has a denominator, meaning it's a fraction, you cannot divide by 0. That's a math crime. So we set the denominator to equal 0 just to find our restricted, illegal numbers. Step 2. If your function has an even root, like a square root, you literally cannot have a negative number inside it. So we set the inside, called the radicand, to be greater than or equal to 0. Let's apply that first rule step by step, like a puzzle. Take the formula f of x equals x plus 1 divided by 2 minus x. We have a denominator here, right? It's 2 minus x. Our golden rule says we must figure out exactly what makes that denominator 0.
So think about this for a quick second. Wait, what actually happens if x is exactly 2?
If x is 2, the denominator becomes 2 minus 2, which is 0. And as we know, division by 0 totally breaks math. So 2 is an illegal input. Notice how we write that legally using our new interval notation. The domain is every number from -infinity up to 2, strictly using a parentheses because 2 is excluded, glued together with our union symbol, to every number from 2 to positive infinity. We just cleanly mathematically stated, any number in the universe is fine except the number 2. Now let's test our second rule. Here we have an even root.
f of x equals the square root of 7 minus x. To avoid imaginary numbers, the inside part, that 7 minus x, has got to be positive or exactly 0. So we set up the inequality, 7 minus x is greater than or equal to 0.
When you solve that, you'll find that x must be less than or equal to 7. If you try to plug in an 8, you'd get the square root of -1, which is totally illegal for real numbers. So the absolute crucial point here is that our domain stops inclusively at 7. Notice that square bracket next to the 7? That means exactly 7 is allowed, because the square root of 0 is perfectly fine.
Section 4, Reading Graphs and Data. Now let's connect this whole concept directly to the real world by pulling domain and range straight off a graph, because sometimes you don't even get an equation, you just have a raw chart.
Imagine you're looking at a graph, charting U.S. oil production over decades. The horizontal x-axis measures time, specifically in years. Because time is our input here, the x-axis represents our domain. The vertical y-axis measures the output, thousands of barrels of oil produced per day. And that makes the y-axis our range.
If the visual graph explicitly starts tracing data at the year 1973 and ends exactly at 2008, our domain is inclusive from 1973 to 2008. We use brackets because those specific boundary years have real recorded data points. Looking vertically at the y-axis, let's say the lowest production point is 180,000 barrels and the highest peak is 210,000 barrels. That sets our range. Brackets, boundaries, done. It really is that straightforward.
Finally, Section 5, Tackling Piecewise Functions. Let's move to the ultimate boss level of functions and see how this builds into something called piecewise functions. Sometimes real life is just way too complicated for one neat little rule. Sometimes the rule changes entirely depending on the input. Let's look at a super common scenario, museum tour pricing. Let's say you bring a group of 1 to 9 people, and the cost is $5 per person. Simple enough. But if your group size hits 10 or more, the rule abruptly changes. It becomes a flat, fixed fee of $50, regardless of whether you bring 10 people or 15 people. The domain, which is the number of people, dictates exactly which pricing formula we are legally allowed to use. Here is a classic student confusion that shows up all the time, translating a multi-part real-life scenario into algebra. Think about your cell phone bill. If you use under 2 gigabytes of data, you pay a flat $25. But the second you cross that 2 gigabyte boundary, boom, you pay your base $25 plus $10 for every extra gigabyte over 2. So we actually have two completely separate equations living inside the exact same function, governed entirely by the domain boundaries.
So let's test this out. What is the exact cost if you use 4 gigabytes of data? Think about it. Which piece of the function do we plug that input into?
Well, because 4 is greater than our boundary limit of 2, we have to use the second formula. The first formula is technically illegal for this input, so we plug 4 right into the second equation. 4 gigabytes total minus the 2 base gigabytes leaves us with 2 extra gigabytes. Those 2 extra gigabytes times $10 apiece is $20. Add that to our $25 base fee and we get an exact total cost of $45.
We've seen how the function machine processes inputs, how to write out intervals with precise mathematical grammar, the golden rules for algebra restrictions, and how piecewise functions handle complex real-world rules. If mathematical boundaries can control our taxes, our data plans, and even predictive models for horror movie tickets, what invisible boundaries are guiding your daily decisions? Think about that the next time you look at a graph or a pricing chart. Everything has a limit.